Mission fucking accomplished. Goon Swarm is not a threat.
Good luck with your old dumb nullsec war snuffed out #1. Anomake Keep Star is next, and then come on.
There, and then you were just going to fucking magically jump into EVE Online in a system, and it was just going to load, and nobody was going to call you fucking stupid later?
There's an Eagle fleet that has dive bombed a Megathron fleet. This is the bravest shit I have ever seen in my life.
The best possible shot to do something to the Imperium, and you fucked it up.
I talked a lot of shit over the last couple months. It's time to fucking eat some. And I showed up here to eat shit. Like,
The reason that this keeps started and get contested, and I cannot make this up, is because of tie-dye.
Guess where goons are going to live after this war is over?
Current plan is 319, I believe, right?
Hell.
High sec.
I can
People
tell you very
overreacting.
clearly, our Diplos didn't even fucking care. Like,
White daddy.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in again. This show goes out to all of our viewers who live in high security space. Obviously, you live in. I already know that anybody watching this, you live in high security space because either you are here to have a good time or you're a coward. I think that general sort of EVE polarization implies that those are the only two reasons to live in high sec. But maybe we've got some guests today to shine a little bit of light on this and see the nuance behind people who choose to inhabit that area of space. We've talked to wormholers, we know why they live there. We talked to nullseckers, we know why they live there. We talked to an unlimited number of people in other areas of space where they enjoy non-consensual PvP. But today we have some specialists with us. We have the Puce Moose making his first appearance here on the show. The Puce Moose is a disgusting low-sec griefer. Is that what you enjoy doing, Puce?
I do engage in non-consensual PvP often. I'd say daily.
Excellent,
Good to be here.
wonderful. We also have the CEO of EVE University, perhaps one of the few extremely long-lasting and endlessly energetic organisations in this game. Lauren, thank you for visiting today. Are you currently in high sec as we speak?
I am, yeah. I'm in Jita at the moment.
Excellent, excellent. We also have, all the way from Pandemic Horde, we have Kismet with us as well. Kismet, what do you like to do in EVE Online, even if it is from deep dark nullsec?
Flying Addictor. I am number 2 on Zkill with an Eris because I'm good at whoring, but I like killing entire fleets. I just
Excellent.
PvP.
Excellent, thank you. And of course, we have the unlimited number of hours that people put into mining, represented by Dr. Spodumane. How are you today?
I wish I didn't have that reputation. I don't like mining.
No, it's all about the name, really, isn't it? It kind of throws people off as a knee-jerk reaction.
Well, that was the point. It was supposed to be ironic, but it became true. I'm now the recently ex executor of one of the larger high sec mining moon groups that is now unfortunately dead. But in some ways, that was a great relief.
Thank you. Well, do you know what? I think we're just going to crash straight into this topic. Kismet, I'm gonna come to you first. You have developed something of a reputation for being incredibly helpful. And the other day we were having a chat in the EVE online Discord about we were just touching upon the new player experience and what the new player experience seems to show to brand new players who create a character and log in. First thing they see is high security space. How do you feel about what the new player experience does for telling people that there may be more to EVE Online than high security space, or is that perhaps unfair to even say people are missing out?
So this conversation started because the data team went ahead and released a little bit of data they went ahead and pointed out that 50% of new players started, 50% of all players currently playing started this year. 50% of them also live in high sec. And so those of us who don't live in high sec, we tend to think that is a tragedy. The problem is that the impetus to get those players out of high sec is so, the inertia is so vast, because most people don't join to kill people. Like, it's a tiny, tiny percentage. I think Laura might have a better feel for this number, but according to the data team, it's like 20 to 30% PvP. And most don't start that way. They start out, I started out as missioning, you know, then again, we didn't have tutorial at that point. But getting people to leave the comfort of HiSec is incredibly hard. And I'll point out that I run one of the guides out there that basically gets players, and it's designed to go ahead and get them into learning the game enough that they can go ahead and do the SOE arc. The SOE arc puts incredible pressure on them because it's a hard mission for brand new players. And then I push them towards exploration, which teaches them exploring the game, you know, getting out there amongst the people. And then from there, they can join any corporation out there because they've proven that they could handle themselves. And again, and if they can't deal with it, I tend to drive them to Laura's group.
For some extra education. Well, I tell you what, Laura, you know, I know that it's not just brand new players that are coming to you to, you know, take some of their first steps, or even, you know, second or third steps in this game here. But I expect that no doubt you do have a lot of instantly in the moment brand new players, you know, approach you and your group to get their start in the game. When you have brand new players approaching EVE University, do they ever sort of, I mean, do you ask, do they tell you what they think the game is, what they think they're going to get out of it?
I mean, yeah, we do tend towards having the newer players, or, I mean, fairly often returning players who have tried to get into the game before and, you know, never quite managed to make the leap, and then they decide to try again and try EVE University this time. Yeah, I mean, I would agree with what Kismeter said about most new players don't necessarily want to do PvP. There are some that do, but they tend to be the minority. Most of the new players that we come across tend to be more focused on PvE and exploration and that kind of thing. The sort of the activities that they see as perhaps slightly safer, slightly more solo activities. So yeah, and HiSec is good for those kind of things. You know, it's somewhere they can play more casually and sort of get to know people while they're starting to learn the game.
Okay, interesting. What's I mean, it's as somebody who is sort of deeply entrenched in what EVE Online is to me, it genuinely surprises me to hear that you get most of the people approaching you aren't looking for PvP, because obviously, you know, I've fixed in my head, you know, what this game is and what it's for. And I've always been personally of the opinion that EVE Online is fundamentally a PvP game. When these people are saying that they're not here to PvP, do they just mean the classical definition, as in ship to ship, player to player combat in space with guns? Because obviously, you know, there are other types of the game which are PvP as well. You know, there's when you're doing industry, when you're trading, all of that it is a form of PvP in this game. Are they okay with that type of aspect of it, or are they not looking to compete there either?
I have a reverse question.
Okay, let's have that instead. Yes.
Why do you think people join EVE? What one activity brings them in more than anyone else? Laura and I probably knows this too. It's one activity that brings most people to EVE. Do you know what that one is?
In my mind, I would assume.
Nope.
Mining, isn't it?
It's mining. Mining is the reason why people join EVE. I know you're going to laugh. The people we have in the EVO Discord, they all want to mine. They want to do industry.
Do they want
and-
to mine, or have they heard that that is the best money-making activity to then go on and achieve something else?
No, they want to mine. The kids
So
yearn for the mines.
Pretty cool.
I can back that up. When we started Starline Enterprises in like 2019 or something, we had a lot of new players. The biggest activity was mining or hauling. We had people drop out a lot because you get ganked when you're hauling. People absolutely hate that. Aren't really willing to learn the techniques to not get ganked. And in transitioning Starline from a PvE mining corporation into PvP, because that's my bag, and I started, I guess, taking over as the dictator of Starline Enterprises, we lost quite a few people because some people just don't want to take risks. They don't want to have the, I guess, the bad feeling of losing. I think the ships are ammo philosophy of EVE Online is like quite difficult to grasp for people coming from other games. Like, you don't want to lose. Why would you want to lose? So yeah, I'm not surprised that mining is what people want to do, but I am disappointed.
It's in this moment that I do realise that I have even stated myself, Redline, you'll have heard this before, but I did start this game with the intent to be a hauling tycoon. Okay, so you have reminded me that that is actually how I started this game. And that's in spite of coming to this game because of the Ubiqua Seraph infiltration article in PC Gamer, which is a extremely PvP slant on EVE Online. Yeah, thank you for reminding me in that case. It makes a lot more sense now. I suppose, but my experience was starting out like that, and within about 3 days, completely changing my mind and wanting to do PvP instead. Okay,
That's an interesting question, though. Did any of us here actually start and go straight to PvP, or did everyone start and think missions, industry, that sort of thing? Because I started doing missions.
Redline, what did you expect from Eve when you logged in? I'm asking you just as you put something into your mouth. Okay, so that's one. Yeah. Yeah. Laura, what did you think you were going to do on your first when you in Eve as your career when you first logged in?
I mean, I did almost exclusively PvE for probably 8 years after I started playing.
Yeah.
It was only when I went off to Pandemic Horde I started doing PvP. So yeah, majority PvE for most of my time as a new player.
But what I mean is that what you logged in and is that what you thought you were going to do, or did it turn into that?
I would say more of it turned into that. I think probably the thing that attracted me, like what attracts most people, is the big news stories, the big nullsec battles, and all of that kind of thing.
Okay. And Spod, when you rolled your first character, what was your you log in, you're in your first noob ship. Where did you think you were going to be ending up?
I was literally 12. I don't remember.
12?
Yeah,
Did your parents
I was
agree to the
11.
EULA for you?
12.
No, they didn't. That's why I just
Wow.
cycled trial
Wait,
accounts
Listen,
over and over and
we
over
need to
again.
pause the
That's
show. I need
illegal.
to contact CCP right now, say that there has been a breach of contract here.
Need to be 13 unless you have your parents' permission. We get them all the
It's
time.
okay. It's okay. I'm 32 now.
It's okay. Alpha Star Pilot started when he was 11 and he was trying to FC at 11. So just point this out. There's exceptions to every rule.
It's kind of obvious though. Like, think of every other MMO ever. What are the first things you do? You go out into the starter area, you punch goblins or wild hogs, and you whack a rock with a pickaxe. Like, those are the two things that are core of most video games. Outside of your typical competitive shooter or MOBA, no game in the MMO world starts and centralizes around PvP. So of course that's what people come to do, because it's a headline feature. One of the big headlines of Eve is that it's got this great depth of industry and mining and everything else around it. You can argue whether that's necessarily true or not. But I think that's quite an obvious draw. The PvP side of it is not something that's as easy to represent. Because we all know that the true addictiveness of the PvP is when you first get the shakes and you can't leave your chair and because you're in this desperate fight and you keep battling until you pee yourself because it's so intense and you just chase that high forever and ever and ever. And that's that PvP thing that I think people really get hooked on and move on to later. But it absolutely makes sense that most people don't come in looking for that.
That what we've found out here is that, the assertion, Kiz's assertion that, the vast majority of people join the game expecting to go out mining. Let's give that as a catch-all for just doing PvE as well. I think that might be fair as well. Given that seems to be pretty universal across all of us here, aside from Redline, it goes on to the next thing. Like most of us in this channel then found that we wanted to do PvP instead.
Can I ask a potentially interesting question?
Yeah.
I think it will have a huge effect on what your expectations were. Who or what drove you? Like for me, my actual thing was I wanted to go shoot rats in a drake because I saw my brother doing it. But where did you actually come into the game from? Because I think if you came organically from like typical adverts and just scrolling through like cool games to play right now lists, you probably did go down the mining route. If you were recommended by people that you knew were already playing the game, I think that expectation of PvP was probably a lot higher. So that my curiosity is, what was Redline's experience? Where did he come from? What was his path to the game?
A person told me that EVE Online existed, and I was watching streams about it. That's pretty much it. I didn't even play with that person when I started playing the game.
Okay, but my point is that's more player guided. You saw other players doing things more often.
Okay. I mean, for me, it was I had just got my first job, and I also had the luxury of living at home, so I had the first opportunity to pay a subscription for a game, right? Which I wouldn't have done, before I had a job. And what I wanted to play an MMO because I wanted to be part of a living world, living with other people, not with just NPCs. I mean, it's very much in modern terms for people who are now my age as I was back then, mid teens. Minecraft takes on such an incredibly bigger significance when you are playing it multiplayer than when you're playing it single player, because you are now constructing in a world collaboratively for somebody else. The world will change without you changing it, because somebody else, another person, is making some meaningful changes to it. That's why I wanted to play an MMO, and the sole reason I picked EVE Online is because I thought it was cooler than games about warlocks and wizards, right? Which is the other type of MMO.
Used to be the only type.
Yeah, but I was a member of a PC gaming forum, and there were some people there who were playing it, so I intended to join and then contact them. And so it's the social aspect that got me into PvP. Which is kind of where you were going with that, I think, Spod, right?
Yeah, the whole concept of the path to PvP is other people.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to see if any of us have ever bumped into or found any PvPers who have not had any social contacts in this game, who have learnt entirely isolated, aside from maybe reading on Reddit or whatever. But I would, at a guess, I would say, do they statistically not even exist?
they're really small. So Laura, I'm sure, sees this again. maybe more than me, but I definitely have people who look. We have a bunch of solo guides written by people who just solo, and they're trying to follow these guides, but because they don't have the context of how the rest of the fleet works, they get overwhelmed very fast. And it's frustrating because I know that they want to go ahead and be the best. They want to go ahead and do something they saw someone on stream did that was amazing. They want to go out there in their solo battleship. By the way, they all want to be in a battleship. They don't want to be in a small ship. They want to be in a battleship. So they want to go out there and have, take on, be Lucy Lou and go ahead and take on 10 people and then survive and then brag about it later. But the reality is they get out there, they die in a hurry because they don't know what they're doing. They don't understand the N+1 gameplay that Eve is at its core. And I again, Laura, have you have many people that just say, just teach me how to PvP so I can go be myself?
Kind of, although I guess my experience is kind of biased because the fact that they're joining Eve Uni in the first place probably means they're looking for people and they're looking for, help with stuff. We do have some people that just want to do solo, but they tend to be, the minority because most people are joining Eve Uni because they want to join in with group activities and stuff.
Okay. I mean, obviously, Eve Uni is far from a stranger to PvP. We over the 18 or so years I've been playing, I'm aware that you guys have been leading fleets of anywhere from 2 guys to sometimes a couple of hundred in certain situations. What kind of split is there between direct PvP events or lessons in Eve Uni and lessons on non-direct PvP things?
There is.
I know there's a lot of crossover because there's a lot of piloting going on in all of these, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would say there's a fairly even split, to be honest. Quite a lot of our teachers are FCs and stuff. They're quite PvP focused, so and there's a lot to learn about PvP that there maybe isn't to learn about mining. Once you've kind of got the basics down, it's how many times can you tell people how to mine? But there's much more depth to PvP, so we do have quite a lot of classes and fleets and stuff that are aimed towards those PvP players. So I'd say, probably a fairly even split between PvP and non-PvP stuff.
Okay. I mean, when somebody reaches the end of, they choose to move on from Eve University. Obviously, move on rather than that was a good couple of years. I don't want to play Eve anymore. When they want to move on, how many of them are moving on to PvP, and compared to how many do you feel are moving on to non-PvP activities?
I mean, it's difficult to say because quite often people kind of don't really say where they're going. But I mean, the whole ethos of Eve Uni is kind of like join, learn what you need, try a little bit of everything, and then once you've found what you want to do, then go and do that. Go somewhere else and do that. So I'd say quite a few people go towards more PvP kind of stuff,
even if they didn't necessarily intend to on day one.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
To echo that, for Horde, when people basically feel they outgrew Horde, it's usually because they want to go do small game PvP, they want to do wormholes, they want to focus on just one part of the environment. The biggest one is, I think, probably wormholes, just because Horde doesn't do wormholes at all, just because it's really hard when you have a bunch of spies. But we do have some go to LOSAC and stuff like that, but they just want to go ahead and have that more small ship experience kind of thing. They don't want to have, and I'll point out that we've had Eve Uni come to our space, and we don't form fleets for it. We just take standing fleet out, and that's like 80 people sometimes. So it's really overwhelming for them to deal with that. So we kind of have to sometimes scale it back to make sure we're not going to crush them immediately. Otherwise, they just run away anyway. But the people that leave, they are looking for, the upper echelons of PvP, and they tend to be pretty good pilots and stuff like that. But then again, we also have some of the most highest skilled players in Eve hanging out with us. So I don't know.
To sort of switch it up a bit. when you're interacting a lot with brand new or at least quite young players in the game, when they are living in high sec and they are getting advice and talking, that they're joining classes, they are doing any kind of high sec activities as well. What do you hear are their complaints about living in that space? What problems are these people complaining about most of all? And it's okay to say being suicide ganked, right? Because that's a perennial complaint. How do you answer those kind of problems? And that's really for anyone.
the biggest problem I see. So if you guys go to eveonline.com, find their Discord, there's a new player questions. You can interact with players that are brand new joining. They struggle to load their guns, but they definitely go ahead and get into this paralysis of, I don't know what to do next. I don't know where to go next. We try and give them a path to say, do the career agents, do the SOE arc, and then you can do anything. That usually gives them enough knowledge to go ahead and do something. But they definitely go ahead and just completely freeze up because they're like, well, I just want to play by myself. I don't want to PvP. I want to make money. They only know they want to make money so they can buy skill books. Honestly, skill books is the biggest reason they need money when you're first starting out. You guys can laugh about it, but 3 million is a lot to them. They'll mine for an hour and make 3 million and be like, wow, I've just made 3 million. So it's a challenge, and they just get completely lost. And once you do give them exploration, then they can make money. Then the sky's the limit, because then they start trying to do injection and paying for their Omega with Alpha, which is another huge problem.
Yeah. I do know that's a sort of a pet topic of mine, is that there seems to have been a lot of promotion from player groups in this game. Not, there's plenty of promotion from CCP as well, but a lot of player groups in this game as a way of trying to entice new players to their groups, are very vocal about the concept of you can pay for the premium version of the game just by doing stuff in the game. Whereas all I see when people talk about this is screaming and crying out in agony, because they have, in my mind, they've locked their mindset onto this idea that they need to get, number one, they need to be Omega, and number two, that they absolutely need to not shell out any of their money in real life for it. And okay, look, not everybody can afford to pay for an Omega account. And
what, the most expensive game?
Well, hold on. The other elephant in the room is that, yes, EVE Online is at an extremely high price to pay for premium. Do you think that there's anything that that can be done, any messaging that there could be done to maybe... Do you think it needs to be turned down, this message of you can pay for the game by playing it? Do you think it's bad that we tell people that in their early days?
I think it's an extreme grind to actually pay for the game with ISK if you just started out, and I think it's incredibly difficult if you don't already know what you're doing, because everything is min-maxed already. The meta for all of the high-sec... Sorry, I'm PvPing a Kester right now. The meta for all of the high-sec stuff is already figured out. Everybody knows. People are doing it better than you, faster than you. If you're looking for combat sites, an Orthrus is going to pop in and clear it in 5 seconds or something. This is an experience I've had. So people think they can do it, but it's just so difficult if you don't know what's going on.
The price of Plex, and bear with me through this first assertion here, right? The price of Plex never changes in this game. It is a constant, because the price of Plex is always equal to the amount of effort that it takes in this game. Which is always going... Yeah, thank you. It's always going to be a large amount of effort in this game to afford that. And like Pew says, it's typically done by people using, let's say, high-end chip to accomplish it. They're not using a venture to mine for Omega. They're using barges and exhumers. They're using barges and exhumers if it's on a normal rock that they're eating, right? They are not PvEing in a Kestrel. They are PvEing in an Ishtar or a marauder, something like that.
I feel
that does change. Like, I wouldn't want to say it's entirely true that it's a fixed amount of effort to plex ratio.
Not fixed, but it is high because it is a finite supply.
Yeah, it's sort of half tethered to an effort level, and then half tethered to the world economy, depending on how much people want to spend on their video making.
I do feel CCP bears a lot of responsibility here because they give the new player experience as the ultimate in Dunning-Kruger. They went ahead, and the idea of Dunning-Kruger is that you know, when you first start something out, you don't understand it well, and people don't understand Dunning-Kruger well, so it's vulnerable to itself. Then you get into this pit of despair where you realize, oh God, I know nothing. And then when you come out the far side of it, you think you know, but you realize you still don't quite know. Eve, when you first start out, you feel that you know all the mechanics. You're like, oh, this is how this works. This is how it works. This is what I can use to kill this. But then when they get into the real world, it gets thrown in their face. And we get a lot of this in new player questions where they're just like, well, just go PvP. They barely know how to load the ammo on their ships. Again, that's the base level of how what you're dealing with when people are first starting out. And they don't have the resources to buy the ships. They don't want to spend money on the game at all. They're convinced that they can just play for free because they keep getting told you can play for free. And it just gets harder and harder for them because it's a lot like Tarkov in that way. When you play Tarkov for the first time, you're like, oh, I can just go ahead and start with a free kit. I shoot a couple of guys, take their stuff, and make the extract. What's so hard about that? It's an incredibly tough game. And it's like Minecraft. If you're not willing to learn the crafting table, you're going to have an incredibly bad time. You're like, well, I'm just going to speed run this. I just need a couple beds, and then I can get to the nether and kill the ender dragon. That's how Minecraft works, right? So
I was going to ask, is there actually in the new player experience any organic introduction in game to PvP without somebody having to show you? Someone showing you as in saying, hey, let's go PvP, or someone killing you. There's nothing that says go out and fight another player, is there?
It's actually got an anti-bias to it because there's no anti-griefing in all of the newbie systems, along with all the systems along the SOE path. So at one point we had someone that was killing new players on the SOE path, and then they got banned, I think, in HiSec.
Okay, they were ganking them and getting concorded, right?
They were doing very creative methods, and I don't want to talk about it because, again, the people who were doing the character got banned. So people are very creative, as you know. But it's almost an anti. And the thing is that I wish, and there are sections of the Air career program that definitely encourages that. And I have a character called Air Career Target just to go ahead and get those kills in. But they definitely don't want to try and go get those kills naturally because that's just too scary. You know, go kill 75 destroyers or stuff. So that's just really hard for them to understand. Why would I want to do that? So
it's,
I think,
go on, sorry.
If there's no there's no in-game incentive really to go and PvP when you're a new player. If you join a group that isn't PvP focused, say, I want to mine, I'm a new player, I joined a mining group. Most of those people probably aren't going to want to PvP either. So they're going to say, no, stay in HiSec, don't lose your retriever or whatever. Avoid the nasty gate to Mount or whatever over there. So they're just going to stick there forever, ostensibly, until something changes.
Do we think that... Let's try and picture a different way for Eve to be presented to a somebody who's not currently playing. Do we think there could be something in presenting it as, the adverts going, hey, come to Eve Online and work with some new friends, rather than come to Eve Online and make your fortune?
I don't know if people would be attracted to that. A lot of the fantasy, I suppose, in video games is being the one, the chosen one, the person who does everything, the person who's the celebrity or whatever. The stories that go into the news that bring people in are always about things that one person or a group of people have done that it affects the whole universe, right? I think that's the fantasy that people want to fulfill. If it says, come to Eve and be a drone in the swarm. I don't think that's particularly attractive.
I'm just saying, you don't understand how a single pilot can make a huge difference in fights. For a while there, I was flying just a Mollusk just to damp out Ninetails, because Ninetails is a fantastic pilot. But when he can't target people and see all these people are dying, then he gets really mad. But the real key here is that I feel the most effective one was the This Is Eve, where they went ahead, the actual players talking about that, and you have the This Is Eve with Shadu, the actual players talking amongst each other. I think that was one of the more effective campaigns. But I think the bigger problem new players have in overall, which is hard to understand, is they treat their ships like pets. They give them names. They want to carry on to that ship. And anyone who's ever PvP'd knows you don't get attached to ships because ships die. And so it's like they're playing Minecraft. They're like, well, I have a specialized pickaxe and I'm only going to use it. I'm going to use it every single day. And eventually I'm going to go ahead and wait, I'm going to lose that pickaxe. They get very panicky when they realize they're going to lose that pickaxe.
Okay. Do we think that there's anything CCP could do about that extremely natural mentality?
My biggest thing is to give them the fitting skills. Yeah, the fitting skills are huge. The fact that they have to train for 2 months just to sit in certain ships, not even to like the skills that they need to fly them. Give them shield upgrades. It doesn't matter to me that they have shield upgrades 5, but it makes a big difference to them. It's like a month of training for no real reason.
Also,
Laura.
when I first joined the game, there was a tutorial. It was 2018, but the first thing the last thing that you did in the tutorial was essentially dive your ship into an exploding hive that you lost your ship afterwards. So like I was attached to this little rifter this whole time. I had been fighting, going through, and I'm just expected to suicide dive it into this hive. I was like, no, fuck that. But I had to do it. I didn't want to lose it, but I did it.
The new MP does kill you, right?
Yeah, instantly.
Twice.
Instantly, but it doesn't ask you to do it to yourself.
They actually kill you 3 times. They do 1 in the tutorial and then 2 in Soldier of Fortune. And the problem is that new players that come in and do Soldier of Fortune first tend to lose that ship, and then they cannot replace the parts of it, and they lose way more. I'm point out, we have so many people who start Soldier of Fortune first, and then they lose their ship, and they're like, I don't have anything now. They don't have any money. Anyway.
That's something CCP can fix.
Laura, I was going to ask, because Kismetir touches upon what's traditionally known as the Magic 14. What does Eve Uni tell people about the Magic 14 right now?
I'm a little bit biased against the Magic 14.
Against,
yeah. I think it's a good list of skills, but it's not good for new players. And I think a lot of new players will see the Magic 14 and they will see it as a skill plan and they will start training that. But the thing is, the Magic 14 doesn't help you fly anything. So there's no point sitting docked in a station training, your base skills for 2 months before you can actually fly anything. What new players should be doing is training
new toys
that allow them to unlock new ships and stuff like that. So I think Magic 14, it's an easy thing to point people towards, but also it's quite dangerous. It shouldn't be treated as a skill plan as many new players treat it as.
I suppose that the issue with that is that the Magic 14, they are referred to frequently as required skills because every single ship in the game only works at a competitive level when you have all of those skills. And that's not just competitive in PvP, but that's competitive in PvE as well. You need that last 5% capacitor recharge. You need that extra shield capacity. You need that extra fitting room to actually fit a full rack of useful competitive modules on your ship. Obviously, with CCP even if it's in a roundabout way through extractors and injectors, CCP definitely has a conflict of interest when it comes to those skills. I think that you say you're biased against them, but I think that we all kind of are on the same page here with the concept that especially when you're just starting the game, being able to unlock new toys rapidly and repeatedly is good for keeping somebody hooked. I might even say, because of, here's what you said, and Puce, you're touching on it as well, that if you are rapidly unlocking new toys, new ships, new weapons, then you're already ditching your last ship and getting used to the idea that you don't buy a flagship and sit in it forever, So it's a bit of a conflict of interest because CCP sells skill points, and they are also basically required here at the same time. CCP has acknowledged this, and they've said in public that they want to get rid of the Magic 14. Do we have any solutions to this that could in any way, get over but my money, my income for the company?
I mean, who remembers learning skills? I remember learning skills. I
Yeah.
immediately trained all on the advice of my brother who got me into the game. I immediately trained them all as high as I could. I just didn't fly anything for ages because I was doing learning skills. CCP took those out of the game, and I think that was an absolute plus because you don't have to go through that anymore. You can advance through things, which keeps you engaged with the game. Things are changing. You're not just waiting for another tick box to appear on your skill plan. As somebody who's spun up new alts semi-recently and tried to get them like Ezekiel history as spies, PvPing without the Magic 14 trained fully is fucking painful. I can't warp all the way across a big system because my cap runs out. What is that about? That seems insane to me. I think they can just get rid of them. Like, there's enough stuff that you can train before you get to that cutoff of however many million skill points it is, where an LSI doesn't work as effectively anymore, that I don't think it's going to impact the amount of injectors and plex, etc. they're selling.
It
The
must
amount
do,
of skill
though,
points.
because there's a lot of incentive, particularly in the later game PvE experience of Eve. There's a lot of incentive for massively parallelized PvE, and what that means is massively parallelized multiple accounts, especially in a game.
The multi-boxing issue.
We're getting into the multi-boxing issue to some extent, but that is nonetheless how the game is at this moment. You can't just you can't just rug pull that because the economy wouldn't survive it.
Somebody could probably figure out exactly how many skill points all of the Magic 14 are. Oh,
no, I already did. So I linked a page in the chat. So I run wckg.net, so a wiki out there. There is a feature suggestion I made that was basically like, here's the Magic 14, here's how many days it costs you. It's 22 days for the upgrade skills, for instance. Upgrade skills have never helped anyone. No one's been like, oh yeah, I finished, mining upgrades 5. I can now use this without a CPU implant. No one has been super jazzed about it. I mean, they are, but they're not happy they're having to do it.
Do you think they're relieved rather than jazzed?
Yeah. But like the rigging skills, there are certain fits that people just assume you have rigging 5, and then they're trying to fit these ships, and they don't know why they don't have enough CPU. They don't know why they don't have enough grid. They just know that they have a problem. And so like the targeting skills, that's huge. So so for the F1 monkeys out there, head of my F1 monkeys out there, if you don't have sensor, or is it target sensor? No, what was it called? Target management.
One that makes you go further.
Signature analysis, the one that makes you locks first. You're going to miss on every single kill for like a month until you're told signature analysis 5. This is why we push people to interceptors and assault frigates, because it gets you those base skills that you at least can be comparative to other in your class. So that's not even talking about their button pushing of holding down control, clicking and hitting F1. That's all we're trying to get to do. And half of them will not do it for their first week or so. Like, you will hand them, here is a kill that we can get together, hold down control, hit click, hit F1, and they still won't do it. Like, for the first week. It's a common problem inside Horde. And you can be like, well, they just need to get better. It's like, but how? These people are just seeing failure. So how are they going to get better? And it's all because of skill points. It's button pushing. It's not lack of, they want to be better. don't get me wrong there. It's just that they might, again, it's that Dunning-Kruger. They think they know it all, and I don't know.
To steer it back, obviously, the new player experience, your starting skills, showing up in this game for the first time, and in some cases or in a lot of cases being told, hey, do these boring skills first. This is, a lot of people experience these skills in high sec. Bringing it back to high sec specifically, does anybody here feel that that CCP needs to be doing something more to encourage people to move themselves on to low sec, null sec, wormhole space? And what could they do?
I think they do. One of the things I was going to bring up, I've got written it down in my notes here, is are we only talking about PvP with moving out of high sec? What other incentives are there to get out of high sec?
Suppose in an ideal world, you'd say some form of revenue.
You get rid of ice mining, you get rid of incursion. I'm sorry, Redline, go ahead.
You shouldn't be able to anchor citadels in high sec at all. Everything in high sec should be done in NPC stations. Simple fix.
I would go the reverse. No NPC stations at all, only citadels.
Ugh.
No.
Why? Can
That
you
is rife for
possibly
abuse.
justify that?
No safety, no. You have to PvP. That's the push.
Here's the thing. I may be a turbo aggressive absolute nightmare for other players to interact with in the game, but I do feel that there very much needs to be a space for people to comparatively, obviously it should never be entirely safe, and it is not entirely safe, somewhere to relax. And high sec does provide that, though, doesn't it?
That idea would also require the war deck mechanics not to be horrifically broken.
Yeah.
The war deck mechanics exclusively apply to people who would like to have a structure in high sec, and you do not need to have a structure in high sec to have an income
idea
and to have a social life.
To elaborate on your point of there is a required place of safety. I mean, that's quite clearly absolutely true, because myself included and all the people that I quote unquote flew with in my group, that's why they're in high sec in the first place, because they can play the game for like a couple of weeks and then they can not play the game because whatever, they want to do something else with their life, and come back in 6 months and know that they can carry on exactly where they left off. I know some people don't necessarily think that should be the way the game is played, but that's a huge draw to people, that they can still do what they want to do. It means there's a lot of people that have that psychology. Like you mentioned Tarkov earlier. I love Tarkov. I think it's a brilliant game, but I don't play it because I do not have the time to deal with the wipes. Because I spend a couple of weeks and enjoy it, and I get some cool stuff, and then I go and exist for 2 months, and I come back and all my stuff's gone. And I'm like, I don't want to do this again.
I thought it's because our aim sucks compared to all the new kids that have much better reflexes than us.
That's part of it, sure.
For sure, me.
I mean, there is always going to be an accomplishment gap, and there should always be an accomplishment. I'm not going to say skill gap. There should always be an accomplishment gap between somebody who wants to put a 5% effort in and somebody who wants to put a 95% effort into their gameplay here, right? And
I'm not at all mad that when I play Tarkov, I've got half a rusty AK, and the guy that no life set has got like friggin' laser beams, because that's fine. That's how it works. I just don't want to lose my half AK every 6 months.
That's true.
Yeah. Well, I suppose that in a way that ties into that suggestion of having no NPC stations in high sec. I disagree with that from a kind of people need to be able to relax to some extent.
But I guess my argument would be that you need a reason for people to leave high sec. If you have ice mining where people can AFK and make 20 mil an hour or something like that, if they can do missions and make 400 million doing burner missions, if they can do incursions and make 250 mil an hour in high sec and complete safety, if they can do
If I'm
level
having
3.
fun,
Go ahead.
why do I need to leave HiSec?
It's fair.
Real. It's very real, you know. And you know, I think that. Do you think I'd be right if I said that, you know, the real reason to leave, if not for PvP, should be the greater rewards, higher risk, higher rewards of, you know, more dangerous space than HiSec? Would that not imply that if there is a unbalanced, you know, far too high a set of rewards from some kind of activity in HiSec, that it should kind of get nerfed to move people on? I don't know. What are the biggest income options that people have who stay in HiSec? How much can they
Incursions
make?
is the biggest one, right?
Incursions. And at level 3 and 4 anomalies that do escalations. Those pay insane for the effort. The new home fronts, when they multi-box, can be really strong. They've been taken over by just multi-boxers.
Yeah.
Laura, Laura, there was another one, right? I think you were doing home fronts.
We haven't done an awful lot of home fronts, to be honest.
Someone inside Eve Uni was doing home fronts for a while and making, I think it was 100 mil a ship or something like that. So
Also got the trig wormholes that people just run in marauders.
Does that not put you into a higher risk situation?
No.
Just no.
No.
Okay. Do
Compared to incursions?
Do
No.
people who exclusively in HiSec know that it's comparatively risk free?
yes, they
This is the
have to
thing.
deal with competitive. That's it. Go ahead.
It's competitive, but you're probably not going to lose your ship. The thing I strongly dislike about all PvE in HiSec is it's incredibly static. Nothing really changes. I mean, when was the last time level 4 missions were overhauled? Is it like over a decade ago?
Never.
There's no change. There's basically, once you have read the Eve Uni guide on how to run certain mission, you're done. You could just do it.
It actually predates Eve Uni. You know, you have Chappa Nolan's guide that is Eve Survival. That's still the premier guide on it, and he keeps on letting the site disappear for a while. But it still has the best guide, and it's before Eve Uni even existed. So before I even played.
I mean, the rewards for level 4 missions haven't been touched, so the rewards are declining, but they're still at a level where you can just absolutely grind the hell out of them, drop the ones you don't need, run them in your golem or whatever the prime one is now, and just crank out ISK with barely any risk. You might get ganked, but if you are smart and you know the techniques not to do it, not to be ganked rather, you won't be.
Abyssals is a great example. It got tuned, and it's a lot better place now.
I forgot about Abyssals. Yeah, that is essentially a HiSec activity. Spod, you've got something that you want to touch on about what people are doing in HiSec.
My thought was a lot that we've just been talking in the last 60 seconds is that's not necessarily stuff that the new players are doing. One thing I took to doing when I was kind of bored out of my mind of leading this HiSec mining alliance is I would start a new character or stuff like that, and I would join the everyone's favorite group to hate, the little random HiSec mining corps that just, you know, it's a new guy and he just trained Corporation Management 1 and then starts spamming an advert and gets in a bunch of other new guys and they all go and shoot rocks in benches and see what they're doing. And a pattern that I saw a hell of a lot, and I even saw this within my own alliance, is you get these guys and they're new to the game, they don't really know what they're doing, but they've heard that low sec and null sec, or maybe even wormholes, is the cool place to go where you make gazillions. And they get together and they come up with all their little plans and they save up as much money as they can and they build out a little fleet and they go out to no sec or null sec and they drop a structure and they get obliterated. And then they give up. I've seen that cycle so many times. And that one of the things that seems to be happening is they want to have their independence. They want to be me and the boys, and they can't be me and the boys out in low sec or null sec because of the big donuts, the big blobs, as they call them, as you want to call them. It's not the issue that there's not necessarily that there's too much income in high sec, but because low sec and null sec are not accessible to certain kinds of players, those kinds being mechanically inexperienced players and players that don't want to assign themselves to
I
an
think we
existing
know
build.
where this
counterpoint to
conversation
this.
goes, but yeah. Go on.
Ignoring the obvious route, should they have been able to afford a structure to put down in low sec by just being in high sec? If they had have been made to go into low sec to gather materials for that in the first place, they would have a far greater understanding of what that environment's going to be like, where to put their structure, who not to piss off.
But they still couldn't have me and the boys in low sec doing what we want to do.
Me and the boys in low sec doing what we want to do out of an NPC station temporarily
Yeah, but-
while we get our Raitaru or whatever.
Something snuff, something can't live anywhere.
So in that data release that they went ahead and said 50% of players live in high sec, they also went ahead and released a couple other key figures out of that. Around 30%, 35% live in null sec, 6% live in low sec, 7% live in wormholes. That is a very tiny percentage of population that lives out there. So does CCP need to adjust high sec if everyone wants to live there? Maybe. Are people living there because of inertia or they're scared? Maybe. Can they make enough to go ahead and pay for their game? They can. It's a lot of effort, and that's a lot of stuff for CCP as well. I will point out a lot of them are also skill injecting like crazy and buying crazy expensive rattlesnakes still. By the way, in 2025, they're still buying rattlesnakes and trying to run level 4 missions. Just a heads up. And they're still dying in droves because you can't tank a rattlesnake enough in the modern era. So CCP is getting paid at both ends of that equation. You have people hunting, you have the people running the stuff. So are they motivated to change it? Maybe. For me, I want everyone to be in dangerous space so we can shoot each other. I want more idiots in space. I'm happy to help those idiots become less stupid. It's not that they're stupid, it's that they don't understand the mechanics. I don't know how to change the oil in my car, doesn't mean I'm dumb. But I want more people to be in those dangerous areas so we all have more targets. And I'll point out that any newbie that I help today, tomorrow might save my butt with a small little mollusk. They bring out I had a Bantam save me in Hull the other day. A Bantam I taught how to do Logi. And it just takes those small little people. And I feel that the more players we can have that are brand new out in combat space with us just helps the game, because that's the beauty of Eve. That's the good part. I always call it the pizza Eve, and everyone wants to meet the cardboard the pizza sits on. There's a little bit of cheese stuck to the bite. That's PVE. That's paying for your stuff. Why do you want to eat the cardboard when you can eat the actual pizza? Anyway.
I suppose that we can kind of say, how do we encourage these people to move on? We can say things like, these people don't know what's good out there, but there is always going to be a subset, or perhaps even as high as a majority, of people who choose to live in high sec who are getting what they want. It is enough. It is excellent for them. They are enjoying their time there, and they are going to be able to enjoy their time there for maybe years, maybe many years. So it's difficult to kind of come up with any useful, coherent, this is how we solve this problem, because it's not a problem for a lot of people at all.
That's the bit I still don't like about the framing of it. You don't need to move on. Obviously, it's great if you do, and you can have a great time. But if you are happy, you are happy. If you're enjoying the game, you're enjoying the game.
Yeah.
I think there's also probably a large subset of people who enjoy the game for a bit in high sec, but get tired of it quite quickly, but don't move into low sec. I'm describing this as somebody who this happened to. When I started the game, I lived in high sec. I did all the high sec stuff. I got turbo bored, but as a 13-year-old boy, I was too scared to go and take that jump into low sec. But if I had, I would have discovered PvP, which is the one thing that I want to do and the one thing I enjoy doing like the most in Eve. I think there's probably I think there's probably a bunch of people who just don't ever do it because the risk, well, the perceived risk of moving into low or null is greater than the perceived reward is, and they just
Definitely
miss out
agree
on that part.
Accurate.
there definitely needs to be like there needs to be a way for people to have, maybe not necessarily forced, but everyone needs to try it at the very least. You know, you can't say you don't like your broccoli until you've tried it.
Exactly, absolutely. And I think there should be something in the new player experience that makes you go to low second fight. I know there's something that makes you go to low second mine for Kernite or something, but surely that just feels bad when you get popped in your little venture.
They got rid of it. You do it through the career agents now. The career agents give you free Kernite, so they nerf that.
And I hate to bring up the proving grounds because it's a controversial issue, but I do feel that maybe a proving grounds that you can access in the first X days of your account and fight other players with similar skill levels in similar ships might be quite good. There is the risk, of course, of I guess puppy stomping, where you skill inject your account up super high, maybe put a skill point limit on even, and go in and murder all the newbies. But hopefully there's enough new players, legit new players, where you might get matched with someone of your skill level, duke it out. Because one of the other things I was going to say is that your introduction to PvP is probably going to be frigate PvP, which happens extremely fast, and you probably don't know what the hell is going on. If you don't record it and watch it back, you're probably like, what just happened? I just got obliterated by a comet in my, incursus or whatever. I don't know what that was.
So, I think that there's probably maybe an even gentler way of doing this, right? I've talked about it before, so I won't go over it again, but it's the concept of, ignore what it sounds like, but I think you get it, is the speed dating concept in EVE, where rather than an arena where you are pitted against another player, I feel it would be very useful for there to be a type of PvE arena where you are paired with another random player who has filamented into it, and you both have to deal with the rats that are coming in. I would want that content to be over quickly. Go on, Redline.
No, don't take ratters out of the sandbox. Why would you want to do that ever?
No, listen. The monetary rewards would not be competitive.
Who cares?
The idea is that making people have rapid, short, cooperative social experiences, rather than here's a guy, fight him. Because when you work with somebody else, you could end up in a chat channel with them. You could have a 5-minute bit of PvE. Essentially,
marrying them even.
You could end up meeting up with them and getting married, and a married couple, then they save on rent together and they can afford CCP's extortionate Omega prices.
I don't know. I really liked the Proving Grounds, and I think that earlier before the show, and I haven't heard you mention it since the show started, but you said that you thought that the people that weren't in HiSec just wanted the people in HiSec to be fed to them. And I think the Proving Grounds was a way to do that, kind of mix both of those worlds where anybody could just click a couple buttons and be fighting somebody within a few minutes. I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing for the game. A lot of people were mad about the instanced PvP and all that, but you can just participate in it too. You don't have to.
I'm also not a fan of instanced PvP, but I think it might be necessary to get new players a taste.
The argument against it is usually taking people out of the sandbox. But I think that the people that go to the Proving Grounds are people that wouldn't be in the sandbox anyways. They're just docked up.
I disagree with that because people.
Not true.
Right. I love PvP, and some of the best PvP I've ever had is the controlled PvP in the tournament setting, because you have 6 other guys or 10 other guys in a set of ships and it's equal. You can fight each other. If I could just jump into Proving Grounds and fight somebody else in a battleship in my battleship, that's basically similar. Why would I not just keep doing that instead of going out with Fant and the boys and hunting down a marauder or something? I could just pop a filament and go.
What actually happened when the Proving Grounds were up is that people did that instead of being out in the sandbox.
No,
they
didn't.
absolutely spent their time doing that.
You can go on YouTube and you can watch some of the people who won the Proving Grounds things. They're all PvPers. They're all people who have been out in low-sec or null-sec shooting other people, and now they're running these Proving Grounds to get on top and win the prize. They're not in the sandbox anymore because they're doing this.
Hmm.
And you know, if
I
we're
would be
going to go
interested
from
to
a
see
from
the
a new
actual
player
data on that,
experience, if we're going to
I'd
go
love
for
to see the actual data, but
what a new player experience in the Proving Grounds was, when the very first Proving Ground arrived with no module or implant limitations whatsoever, as an experienced player, I was instantly turned off by the fact that basically anybody who just vomited ISK into their ship was the winner in that there. Now, I know that they fixed that in the following Proving Grounds, but if that's how I, as an experienced PvPer, felt turned off by going into that, what on earth is a new player going to feel when they go into that? Even if CCP puts the module limitations on and they put an SP limitation on to like turn the experienced players into idiots briefly while they go in there so that you're on a skill point level, it's not fun to go in and just repeatedly get stomped by somebody who even just has 6 months on you in their head of experience.
Right, but that's how you learn.
But this is why. But this is why I like the idea of cooperative style arenas as well, because it's not replacing their time out in the sandbox where they would otherwise be vulnerable. It's replacing some of their high sec time where they're comparatively not vulnerable already.
I think if you wanted to make the Alliance tournament, you could. The idea would be you would have. Sorry, I'm going to go PvP here. So one thing that they could do and do is you could have basically 2 pauses that you guys appear at. You have a ship maintenance array when you when you use your filament. It costs a certain amount of money. It covers the cost of your ship, and then you go ahead and use that the PvP hangar to go ahead and pull out a ship. And then you go ahead and warp to the arena when it's time, and then you guys fight with whatever ship you guys are given. You guys pull out the ship hangar. I think you could go ahead and do things like that to give that kind of non-organic feel to it, but it might take away from the people that would be out there day to day shooting people, because why wouldn't they just want it handed to them?
It did. When the arenas, the entire time that the arenas existed, it was full of people who would otherwise have been spending the time they choose to play EVE Online, they would have chosen to play it out in the sandbox.
I don't think so.
I don't want to
because the
teach
thing
new
is
players
that you're talking about a mode that can and is heavily restricted. Ship type, module types. If I didn't want to fly the ship type that was in the Proving Grounds that weekend, or that week, I would be out in the sandbox doing PvP instead. It's just, if the Proving Grounds is popping
why
off,
wouldn't you want to fly the ship type? It's all PvP. It's like, if I have to fly a destroyer, I don't mind flying a destroyer if I'm flying against other destroyers.
Well, here's the thing.
what
like,
if I
nobody's
have to
going to
fly
shit me in the Proving
What
Grounds.
if I have to fly a cruiser?
Red line. Let's imagine that the current Proving Ground this week is destroyers. You don't want to fly a destroyer, so you don't want to fly in this scenario. You don't want to fly a destroyer, so you're remaining in the sandbox.
Mm-hmm.
However, a not insignificant portion of the sandbox that you are existing in is now devoid of a number of those people because they've chosen to go to the Proving Grounds and fight in destroyers instead.
Oh,
Laura,
no.
do you have an idea of how we could get more people into PvP from your perspective? Is there a trick, you think?
I think, in my experience, the gap with new players getting into PvP is quite a lot of a psychological one. It's it's not necessarily the skills, it's not necessarily the ships and stuff. It's the actual idea of going out there. And like in EVE Uni, like we're mostly new players, and we still have people saying all the time, "Oh, I don't want to go on that fleet. I don't know enough about EVE." And it's like, well, yeah, but we're all new players here. It could not be any more new player friendly. You can join, like a day one kind of thing, but it's the psychological barrier of, actually getting involved in doing PvP for the first time.
I suppose you're never going to be able to learn to swim if you refuse to leave the 6-inch deep part of the pool. You got to be in a part of the pool where you're floating free if to even begin to try and swim.
There's a business concept that people use that kind of matches this. Knowledge contrast and task paralysis, where essentially you don't know enough to feel confident to do the thing, but you will only learn enough to feel confident to do the thing by doing the thing. For instance, a doctor doesn't learn how to be a doctor by going to school. They learn how to be a doctor by being a doctor. But if they
That's really
never...
true.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And at the moment, I don't think there's an incentive for a new player to try PvP. If you don't want to do it, like just as a gameplay concept, what do you gain from going out and shooting another player? I don't think you do.
It's related back to the Proving Grounds point. One thing I did notice in the sort of high-tech mining groups was they struggled to ever get, like, there would always be somebody who pipes up and says, hey, let's go up to nullsec, lowsec and fight some stuff for fun. And they would never get any traction. They would never get enough people to actually form a fleet and do it. But they did actually participate in the Proving Grounds quite a lot. Like there was quite regularly people would crop up. And these are people who, if they weren't in the Proving Grounds, they were in an orca mining and not doing anything else. They're not engaging in any other way. They would often, usually on their own, but occasionally duo up and go out and do the Proving Grounds because it had that accessibility to them, and it also had that little bit of guidance of you can only use this ship this week. So there's a little bit of a hint of what to do. And yeah, it
And
worked
what you'll
really
be
well in
facing.
that way. Yeah, but on the flip side, that's obviously got very limited usefulness. If they're not engaging with the game much more because they're still just fighting in an instance. But at least they are engaging in some kind of exploding.
Shortly, guys, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to each of you, and I'm going to ask you if you could make one change for people who are in high sec, and that can be to improve the lives of people who are in high sec, or it can be to try and offer them a way to move on to try a different area of space. You know, something to change in the lives of high sec players. Before we do go onto that there, maybe it would be a good idea to just briefly touch upon war decks and the impact that has on a high sec player's enjoyment of the game. Does anybody have any particularly strong opinions on that?
It's fucked.
Oh my
It's all fucked.
fucking god! It's so broken. Let me just fucking exploit the system so you can't possibly have allies in a war, and then let's just ignore that this is a massive exploit and it's been used and abused for years. Christ, it's so broken.
I mean, I'm not trying to justify that kind of exploitative behavior, but obviously you can avoid being war decked by simply not owning a structure.
Sure, but is there not a valid argument that having, whether through a wallet or just through pure friendship, having people to back you up in a war should be an option? And the fact that people can just nullify that through exploits is just ridiculous.
Laura, how does Eve Uni deal with war decks? Do you keep your structures outside of the core group so that you can keep on teaching these people without them just being total hell murdered?
No, our structures are all within Alliance, and that is kind of also intentional because I think it's important for new players to learn about wars and to know that they're not completely safe in high sec. I think that can be quite a trap for very new players to fall into. So I think wars are, and the idea of not being completely safe in high sec is an important part of the game, and also having a a strategic operation to like defend your structure or attack someone else's structure. That's the policy that we have, is basically if someone decks us, pretty much immediately we go and kill their structure, and they're the biggest fleets that most uni members will go on. You know, they'll have a chance to be in a fleet with
It's an
80,
actual
90
objective.
people. Exactly, yeah.
A
So I
tangible
think
objective.
it's a good thing, but the mechanics are broken. They're fucked, you know. So I think in principle, being war deck eligible is important, but yeah.
Okay. I mean, I think that what's one key thing that I've learned tonight is that Eve Uni is a hugely PvP positive group in HiSec, especially if around half or more of the the classes and other learning opportunities are based around PvP and PvP skills.
That's been a big change, because like when I first joined Eve University, when I first started helping with like bringing new players in and stuff, there was literally a policy of, if you want to just do PvP, don't come to Eve Uni, you know, go somewhere else. So there has been a real change in Eve Uni to the position where, yeah, we embrace PvP. We've just started doing like MPSI PvP fleets and that kind of thing.
And what are the numbers of attendance like, with now compared to then? Are they kind of on par, and it hasn't sort of harmed things? Are they bigger? Are they smaller?
It's difficult to say, to be honest. I mean, the policies of Eve Uni have changed so much as well. I mean, like back in the day when I joined, they were very, very strict about, you know, like, oh, you couldn't undock unless you're in a PvP fleet, and you could only fly certain types of ships and all of that kind of thing. So it's pretty unrecognizable to how it was back then.
All right, interesting. I'll tell you what. Listen, if I go through the list piece, I'm going to be coming to you first. If there's something that you could change about the HiSec experience, what do you think you might change, and why?
So this doesn't just apply to HiSec, it applies to all space. I think CCP need to overhaul basically all existing PvE content, so missions, sites, etc., to make it more dynamic. Hopefully at least to the level that Abyssals are. I don't know if folks remember when Abyssals came out, they were touted as a test bed for all the new PvE stuff that they were going to put in, and none of it really materialized. Overhaul all the PvE, make it more dynamic. That means increased threat to people who are running them, so you're going to have more ship losses. You're hopefully not going to have a guy just grinding out all of the level 4s in his golem. He might actually lose it. Going to make it more interesting for people who are running it. You're not just going to do the same ones over and over again. Hopefully it'll keep you engaged with the game longer. You'll be able to experience more of the game because you're in it longer. But I think alongside that, boost the rewards for people who are doing these activities in lower security space. I don't think you should be able to make bank in HiSec and just buy all your shiny ships and never leave HiSec with them. I think there should be an incentive to go to the lower security space, which isn't purely you can also PvP people. I don't think that works for a large amount of the player base anymore. It might have done in the past, but I think the mentality of always take the bait, ships or ammo, etc., has declined somewhat in Eve, and I think there need to be other incentives nowadays.
Okay. Spod, what might you change in HiSec? Other than fixing the broken war deck mechanics, because that's a bug. Yeah, that's unintended, right?
That would be nice. It's a horrific exploit, but we'll see. I'm struggling to think of one really. The main thing that jumps to mind is the whole, like I mentioned, when you get those small groups and they can't access things. So I'd say something to do with geography. We need to improve the geography in the sense of people shouldn't have say over such huge amounts of space, in order to make room for new people to come along and grow. Whether that's through something as nuts as removing junk drives or just some other magical mechanic, I don't know. But
I think we all know where this is going, so
we've been avoiding this the whole
time. We'll move on.
Nerf Antiplex.
What Antiplexes? Are Antiplexes important? I don't understand.
Kiz, what do you think it would make be a good change for people in HiSec, either to make their lives better or to help them move on?
I think the biggest thing CCP could do is experimentation. Try different things. If it doesn't work, reverse it quickly. They've done this before. they made pretty major changes to nullsec ratting, and they immediately reversed it because they realized it was bad for the people that just did the day in, day out stuff there. They could do the same thing in high sec. Now it might make those players feel unpredictable, so you want to have some sort of role why it's happening. But like an example, you could start to charge people when they undock and dock. Having fees and taxes is a good reason for people to leave and move to player-owned structures. There's a lot that they could try, but they just haven't. I think the biggest mobilization for getting people out into the world is actually them having a connection with someone else, having having classes in HiSec for new players from CCP's level could be really strong. Like today, and the thing is, we have how many freaking experts just on this call that would volunteer their time to go ahead and do that. And we do this within Eve Uni. We have people teach classes. I've taught my onboarding class I run every Sunday. And if you get more players involved and realize that they can make a difference, I think that could be very strong. But I think it's just experimentation. The idea of changing missions, very strong. Getting rid of incursions, HiSec. I'm sorry, you guys, just got to deal with it. If you want to make bank, you got to go to some danger. Yeah. So.
Okay. Laura, what do you think could improve people's lives or encourage them to try out something else?
I'm kind of taking a slightly different angle, I guess, because I don't think necessarily people always need to move on from HiSec. I think some people are, totally happy doing the more casual gameplay and just being able to log in, do what they want, not play for a while, and their stuff is safe, they're close to trade hubs and all of that kind of thing. And also something that we haven't kind of touched on is we have obviously a section of the player base who not only is time poor on playing Eve, but also considering like neurodiversity, for example, people who maybe just don't want the stress of PvP and defending their space and all that kind of thing, and they just want to chill out and play this game. So I think maybe more support for the low stress neurodiverse friendly gameplay would go a long way to keeping people engaged, and just overhauling some of the PvE stuff that just hasn't been touched for years and years.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that there's a common theme here that sort of ends up with improved, more engaging PvE, not just in low and null to encourage people to go there, but for people who are enjoying the more casual experience of HiSec would go a long way. Redline, before I hand over to you for what you think should change there, I think that CCP could do a lot better by, in their promotional material to non-players, putting much more emphasis on the social aspect of the game, like they did with This Is Eve, and with things like the Butterfly Effect trailer, which
it's a great trailer.
It's fantastic. They have heavy social cooperation messages. And
don't want to tread on your toes here, Fan, but can I just chime in with something?
Of course, yes.
I took my partner to FanFest. Now, she doesn't play Eve, and she is scared of playing Eve because of how in-depth it seems. But once she saw all of the community and everybody getting along and how engaged everybody was with it, she's making a character at the moment, and she's going to start playing. So definitely signal boosting all of the community spirit stuff, the player engagement stuff, I think is the way to get newer people into it.
And what Laura called out on neurodivergent people, being overwhelmed is the most common reason we have that people don't like doing PvP. At least the people I see on a regular basis, they're like, well, I can't do that because I'm overwhelmed. Because what we're giving them is we're saying, here's an entire buffet of stuff, and you can't just have one or two. You have to eat the entire buffet right now because it's happening right now. And if you don't eat the buffet, oh God, your buffet is exploding. Eat your buffet. and it's just it's completely and utterly overwhelming. And we forget that because a lot of us went through a section where we didn't even have a training thing. We just assumed this is how the game is played. So I feel that lower stress option, you could go ahead and even split Eve, where you have like a practice universe. I don't care, whatever gets them into the game. And they do that a little bit with Eve Echoes, for instance. Eve Echoes, that's one of their solutions, is to make it easy. It's game on rails up until a certain point, and then they just get kicked out in the normal universe. So.
Okay. Yeah. Well, Redline, do you want to tell us what needs to change before cutting us all off?
Well, I think that people should be allowed to enjoy the game as they want to, but I also think that people should be encouraged to go to like low sec and null sec for more lucrative opportunities. I know for a while there, people in null sec were just making characters to farm in high sec because it was so lucrative just to farm there. That should never be the case. But I think that the problem with high sec is that it's better than the other spaces. It's better than the other types of spaces for making money. So anything that needs to change to get people out of high sec needs to change in low sec and null sec, unfortunately. But also, you shouldn't be able to anchor structures in high sec. Just simple. So we're gonna raid a lad if this works. Hey, how about that?
By the way, big thank you for you all for joining us today for this. It's been a good chat.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
This is the bit where I go silent and you do the raid.
Yeah, well, I got this
Sorry.
weird little bot that made a message for everyone to copy and paste and spam in his chat when we get there, I guess. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know if we're gonna do that or not, but I'm gonna send the raids so we can all wave to the screen now. We're not gonna do the thing. We'll be back next week. See y'all then. Bye.
Bye.
Now we
We won't
can
be out
stop
next week, by
waving
the
now.
way. I'm